Vocal sound, mic selection. My favorite microphones to record vocals are large diaphragm condensers with tube mics, tube large diaphragm condensers. The U47 is a classic. I don't have one of those. I most often use either a Microtech FL UM92.1S or a Sound Deluxe E49, both of which are sort of Neumann-inspired microphones. On this particular record, I ended up using the Wonder CM7 FET, which is not a tube microphone, but it has a really nice sounding capsule. It's also an M7 capsule, and it's sort of a cousin of the Neumann U47. However, I will state that I think more so than any other instrument, the vocal sound is really determined by the singer. The character of their voice is going to come through regardless of which microphone you use on them. It certainly is important to select a great microphone for that singer, but I don't tend to sweat the vocal production as much as I do the other stuff because I know that person's character is going to come through no matter what. Some singers are not comfortable with a microphone on a stand in a studio, and they need to have that live feeling, and they sort of insist on a handheld microphone so that they can run around the room and pass the mic to the crowd or cup the mic or go or whatever sort of silly microphone techniques they have. And I do encourage them to at least experiment with using a normal studio microphone, even if I have to give them an unplugged dynamic mic to hang on to just for comfort. Sometimes I'll give people a guitar with no strings on it to sort of hang on to just so they have something to grip. I know if they're a guitar player who's also the singer, you really want to make a singer comfortable. But for me, my favorite is the large diaphragm condenser. I know a lot of people don't like recording really loud singers on mics like that because they can bottom out. So they'll choose a microphone like a Shure SM7, which is also a good choice, but again, not my favorite. I sort of like the sound of the mic bottoming out. I tend to record vocals pretty hot, and sort of a subtly broken sound is good to me for this type of stuff that I'm recording. One way that you can help sort of protect your mic from bottoming out, and it also helps to deal with plosives and sibilants, is I think I have a photo of this. Okay, so this is the mic that I used on Dave, and this little white thing in the middle of the microphone is actually a Bic pen that I just cut down with a razor blade, and then that black thing connected to it is like a hair elastic, I think a big hair elastic. So what I've done is positioned the pen sort of in the center of the microphone so that the stuff aimed at the middle of the capsule is being sort of dispersed a little bit, and that enables the microphone to handle louder pressure levels and harsh things like B's and P's. That stuff tends to get dispersed a little bit more, and it also helps with sibilant sounds like really like heavy S's. Another thing you can do with B's and P's and S's is to aim the microphone so that the singer is not singing directly straight on into it. You can tip it down, or you can twist it to the side. I find that if you're using a pop filter on vocals, which I usually am, the singer will cue off the pop filter more than they'll cue off the microphone itself. So you can sort of hide your diagonal mic position behind the pop filter, and it won't affect the way in which they sing into the mic. They'll still be aiming at the pop filter usually and not the microphone. The angling of the microphone sort of causes the wind from a voice to sort of deflect off of it rather than just go right at it and cause it to bottom out. So yeah, that's a way you can handle B's and P's. The other way, actually, can I go ahead? Yeah, the other way to handle that stuff is with EQ. The first thing that I do after a microphone preamp in any vocal sound is to high pass the vocal. A lot of microphone preamps will have a high pass filter built into it, and The purpose of a high-pass filter in most mic preamps is two or threefold. Number one, if there's any kind of 60 cycle hum, if you're in North America, or 50 cycle hum if you're in Europe, it'll help remove that electrical hum from the signal. It also helps remove rumble from handling noise. If your microphone is, if you've got a shaky floor, or if you have a mic that's not shock mounted, you might get some handling noise or some rumble from many sources. That high pass filter can help remove that rumble. High pass filter also can help remove the plosives from a vocal sound, like the B's and the P's, that stuff. If you happen to have a microphone preamp that has this, or you have an outboard EQ that has a high pass filter that has various frequencies available, or if you have an EQ that you can do sort of a broad low shelf, you can remove the low frequencies, maybe a little bit higher than the 50 or 60 hertz button that's typically on your microphone preamp. And I find myself, typically high passing vocals somewhere around 120 hertz. I find like below that, there's not really, in most cases, especially with aggressive music, there's not really a lot of useful stuff below 120 hertz. And as we're going to talk about in mixing, low end is particularly difficult to deal with, and the fewer sources that your low end is coming from, the more cohesive your mix will be. So if you can remove that super low stuff from the vocal sound at the beginning, you'll be better off in the rest of your signal chain. The other reason to do this EQ first, before compression, is that low frequency stuff tends to drive a compressor. And especially if you're going to be removing a bunch of bottom end at the mix phase, you might want to consider actually doing it at the tracking phase, especially if you're using a compressor during vocal tracking, because it won't drive compression so much. It would sound terrible if you had a bunch of B's and P's, compressed them, and then removed the low frequencies after the fact, because you'll still hear that compression on the B's and P's, despite the fact that that signal is not in the chain, which could make it sound kind of fluttery. And also with vocal EQ, and I don't typically do this at the tracking stage, I might do a little bit of sculpting in the mid-range and the air band to give the vocal more presence, or to sort of set the sound stage as to how upfront I want the vocal to be. We're going to talk more about that in mixing. And then when it comes to compression, I usually compress a vocal on the way in. Some people don't, and it really has a lot to do with the singer and how they perform. Sometimes you don't want to compress a vocal on the way in simply because, or it actually depends on how you're monitoring the vocal in the singer's headphones, but certain singers love to hear a polished version of their voice coming back in their headphones, and it gives them additional confidence and it feels more forgiving. Other singers want a very raw sound of their vocal, uncompressed, un-EQ'd in their headphones, so that they're better able to compensate for how they're singing, what their mic position is, and so forth and so on. Most of the stuff that I record, I am doing some compression on the way in. I try not to paint myself into a corner, but I do like to have a more consistent vocal sound going into my recorder. And what I like to do is actually use two compressors. I'll start with one compressor set super fast, and my compressor of choice for that is usually an Empirical Labs distressor, but you can do it with just about anything that's capable of super fast attack and release times and low ratios. What I'll do is I'll set my distressor usually around a 2-to-1 compression ratio, and as attack and release times as fast as it'll go, and then just kind of grab the peaks. So as a singer's singing, just find their loudest passages and just take a few dB off that. I'll follow that fast compressor with another compressor that's maybe a more typical vocal compressor, like an LA2A style, some sort of optical compressor, or maybe like a very mu tube type compressor, something that's a little bit more flattering to the vocal tone. And then I'll set that at more reasonable, slower attack and release times and a higher ratio like you typically would for a vocal. And I find that the first compressor, the fast one, just sort of brings the vocal down, the range, the dynamic range of the vocal down a little bit so that the second compressor isn't working so hard. And this is actually going to be an ongoing theme for me from here on out to the rest of the course, especially in mixing. I find that treating a signal with several layers of gentle processing ends up being much more transparent than treating it with one layer of heavy processing. And that applies to reverb, to compression, and to equalizing and other effects. So yeah, so now we have a nice compressed signal, and we have to decide. Actually, you know what? Before I move on to overdrive, I do want to say one more thing about compression. If you're recording a singer who's very dynamic, you know, they have some quiet vocals and some loud vocals within one song, you need to give some thought to how you're going to treat those. And Dave here, he's got some. I don't know if he did it so much in this song, but some of the other songs from this session, he has some quiet stuff and some loud stuff. And I needed to make a decision as to how to handle that. Now, were we going to track the quiet stuff in one pass with one set of settings on the gear, and then the loud stuff in another pass with some other settings? I think what I ended up doing, if I remember correctly, was I actually, coming out of the microphone preamp, I multed the signal, which on my patch bay, I have some patch points where I can patch a signal into a mult, which sort of, I guess, means multiple. And then from the adjacent patch points, I can go out of those and now have two outputs of the same signal. It's sort of like just like a Y jack or like an AB box where you can split the signal into multiple paths. And then I had like a loud path. So I had a set of some compression set up for loud path, and I had another set of compression set up for quiet path, and then I recorded those on the two tracks. And then in the mix, I think I was toggling between a loud track and a quiet track. You can also do that with two microphones, and I think a lot of people do that where they might have one mic that they prefer for loud passages and another mic they prefer for quiet passages. For this thing, I just used one mic and split the signal, if I remember correctly. Okay, so also for Dave, he's...
Really quick, on compression, just one from Pataton and Brian. How much are you compressing at the tracking stage?
Probably, you know, maybe like at the most 8 to 10 decibels. At the least, not at all. I like to have the vocal sort of, you know, squashed a little bit so it feels good in the context of my monitor mix. I don't like to, I'm not doing a ton of mixing on the fly, so I'm not, my monitor mix doesn't usually have compression on anything unless the drums, for example, are like real all over the place. I might put some compression on the monitor mix on the kick and snare. But for the most part, I have like my monitor mix real true to how it was tracked. So I like to kind of keep the vocal sort of feeling in the right range. I might, you know, monitor the vocal a little bit louder so that it's always audible. But yeah, a little compression just to sort of make it sit into the mix better, as well as to push me in the right direction. I will compress it again at the mix stage, and I'm going to talk about that more in the mixing portion. But just quickly, at my mix stage, I don't tend to compress. If there's multiple vocal tracks, I don't tend to compress those multiple vocal tracks individually. I tend to set up vocal bus compression. So as various layers of vocals come in and out, backing vocals, vocal doubles, whatnot, that bus compression on the vocal will sort of act to auto mix the vocals and keep the vocals as a whole at a consistent level. But if I haven't compressed the vocals a little bit on the way in, then sometimes as I'm doing bus compression of many vocal layers at the mix stage, you know, one word might pop out from a backing vocal track and a different word would pop out from a lead vocal track. So I like to have kind of a consistent level on the way in. And also vocal automation is super important at the mix stage too, so that you don't have to over compress the vocals. So it's a mix of several layers of subtle compression and a bunch of automation on the vocals in order to get them to sit at the right spot all the time.
Great. Let's keep going.
Okay, so overdrive. Sometimes overdrive is awesome on vocals, other times it's not. Depends on sort of how aggressive the band is and what sort of sound that you're looking for. I will say this about aggression in vocals, or actually overall. A lot of times I've found that the more naturally aggressive a band is, the less aggressive I want my recording techniques to be. Sometimes it's like I don't want to say wimpy music, but more sort of standard stuff that is better suited to aggressive engineering techniques, and the stuff that's like real loud and wild and crazy, if you're too aggressive with your production techniques, it just turns into a mess. So you got to be careful when using overdrive at the engineering stage of things on any instrument. For nice hooves, we did want to drive it a little bit, and I chose to do overdrive on this session at my final compressor, which was I believe a Kenetech LA2AX, which is sort of modeled after the Universal Audio LA2, but built in Kentucky, and it's got some extra features to kind of dial it in. I chose to do my overdrive at the last stage of my signal, just because of the dynamic swing of Dave's vocals. For a singer who's very consistent in volume, you can do that at your mic preamp, but the danger with that, especially if it's a lightly distorted signal, is that loud syllables of theirs distort more than quiet syllables of theirs, and you get sort of a uneven distortion to the tone. But if you do any kind of overdrive sort of later in the signal chain, once you've compressed the vocal, then you're already working with a vocal that's more consistent in level than it is right at the microphone. So I just sort of rode that tube compressor of mine kind of hard at the end of the stage, and got some nice overdrive there. I think I may have also done a hair of overdrive in the mix, but I can't remember that. The ultimate choice. And Dave, here's some headphones for you. I gotta work out a little bit of a headphone mix and patch in a couple things. Do you still need me to print out lyrics for both of us?
Is that okay?
Yes.
Scream loud the
So
second
do you want to do the calm stuff while your voice is really
That's
clean?
That's
or
what
do
I
you
wanted
want
to ask you. It's up to you.
Is it melodic calm,
Yeah.
or is it like
Yeah, it's melodic.
gruff?
No. Nobody can hear you.
Like that?
Goodbye to your plans.
Okay. So it's not super quiet.
No. But I like taking the one into the other because the there's a line where it's that voice and then I can go right into the scream, and I can do that if you'd like, but I don't know if it's gonna mess you up.
No, I'll just put a lot of. I can just compress it a lot.
Okay.
That'll be fine.
Okay, then I can try. Then we can do one from the calm, more melodic, clean into the scream, and then I can come back and just finish the melodic under the scream.
Yeah.
That's all right.
It's cool with me.
All right.
I still have to patch a couple things.
Okay,
in.
cool. Good time if you need. Take an hour, take a week. Take as long as you need. One on the line. This one's a keeper. Can we do it like that? Is it tricky?
Possible, yeah, but we might end up overlapping.
Honestly, man to man. Oh, the power's still powerless. A universe in a grain of sand. In the palm of my hand. Between all those, do you have enough? I need your funerals! And your weddings, your funerals! I'm drinking wine!
Yeah, so that video is a good example of a reason to use a pop filter. As you can see, like just spit flying out of Dave's mouth. That I think, what's the name of the filter I have? It's made by Pete's Place Audio, and you can actually put it in your dishwasher. So it's like it's all metal, so it's a cool pop filter.